is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's newsroom from 9:30 on GBNews.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Very good evening to you. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB newsroom. Some breaking news to begin with. West Midlands police are investigating a driver after 2 people were killed and another person was injured in separate collisions in Coventry. It's unfolding at the moment. We'll bring you more details on that as soon as we get it. Meanwhile, the government's under pressure to reveal the exact number of schools at risk of collapse due to crumbling concrete. Labour is planning to force a vote to compel the Prime Minister to publish a list of all schools at risk, with more than 100 told to fully or partially close days before they're due back. Experts are warning the problem is being complicated by the coexistence of asbestos in schools and other public buildings. Shadow Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson says the government should have acted sooner.
I appreciate that lots of parents across the country will be concerned because, sadly many children are not going to be able to return to education or will be moved into porta cabins or alternative accommodation because of the risk that this kind of crumbly concrete is going to pose. It all feels very last minute, and what we're calling on the government to do is to publish a full list of all of the schools affected so that parents can be confident about where the problems are, and if they're not prepared to do that, we'll force a vote in Parliament this week to make it happen.
The number of people crossing the channel in small boats has hit a new daily record for this year. 872 migrants in 15 dinghies were intercepted yesterday. At least another 2 small boats have made it to UK waters today. The total number of people entering the country illegally has now passed 21,000 this year, but that is still significantly lower than this time last year when 25,000 people had made the journey. The Chancellor has renewed his pledge to half inflation, saying it's time to see the job through. Speaking ahead of the next Bank of England announcement on the 21st of September, Jeremy Hunt insisted the government is on track to reach the target this year. Labour's accusing him, though, of being completely out of touch with the realities faced by families across the country. It comes as the latest figures show the UK economy recovered from the pandemic faster than expected. Tesco staff are being offered body cams after a significant rise in violent attacks. Chief Executive Ken Murphy says he's been forced to increase security measures after seeing physical assaults rise by a third since last year. Writing in the Mail on Sunday, he's called for tougher laws to make abuse or violence towards retail workers an offence, which would result in longer sentences. A red weather alert's been issued for parts of Spain as storms sweep across the country. Residents in Alcanar on the east coast, that's just south of Barcelona, have been told to stay inside as water floods the streets. In the capital, Madrid's mayor has advised the same, with torrential rain forecast over the next 12 hours. A similar story in the United States, where one person has died and tens of thousands of people are stranded at the Burning Man Festival. Authorities have closed access in and out of the site in the Black Rock Desert because of heavy rain in Nevada. Festival goers have been asked to conserve food and water, with local reports suggesting up to 70,000 people are stranded. And more rain's expected over the next few days, so some people have decided to leave the event on foot, trekking to the nearest highway. This is GB News. I'll be back with more in just under an hour's time. But now it is time for Free Speech Nation.
Musician Roisin Murphy is cancelled for stating the obvious. Vigilantes in London attack ULEZ cameras. And an MP in Finland is on trial for quoting the Bible. This is Free Speech Nation. To Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. Another week in the culture war and another cancellation. This time it's the singer-songwriter Roisin Murphy, who has been vilified by activists online and in the media and accused of transphobia and hate, even though, of course, she has said nothing transphobic or hateful. Her record label Ninja Tune has put a stop to promotion of her new album Hit Parade and announced that all the proceeds from the album will go to pro-trans groups. By now, of course, we're accustomed to this kind of story. I cover them every week, and it gets very tiring to be repeatedly told that cancel culture is a myth when so much evidence for its existence keeps on piling up. It's what they call gaslighting. The party has told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears. It's their final, most essential command. Well, some of us are sick of these authoritarians destroying people's lives and then denying that they are doing so, bullying and harassing people and pretending they're the good guys. Let's have a look at what Murphy actually said. What crime could she have committed that is so vile she needs to be punished and publicly shamed? Well, it was a simple message posted on her Facebook page, which read, "Please don't call me a TERF. Please don't keep using that word against women, I beg you. But puberty blockers are effed. Absolutely desolate. Big Pharma laughing all the way to the bank. Little mixed up kids are vulnerable and need to be protected. That's just true." And that's it. That's all it takes. And when the sharks tasted blood, Murphy issued an apology. She wrote, "I cannot apologise enough for being the reason for this eruption of damaging and potentially dangerous social media fire and brimstone. To witness the ramifications of my actions and the divisions it has caused is heartbreaking." Many have criticised Murphy for apologising, but I don't think that's fair. Until you've been subjected to this kind of pressure, you don't know how distressing it is. There's a good reason why testimony extracted under torture is inadmissible in court. People in pain will say anything to make it go away. Predictably, Murphy's apology has made no difference. The attacks have continued and in some quarters have even escalated. Since her apology, 2 of her London gigs have been cancelled with no explanation whatsoever. The sad truth is that apologising to the wolves is simply throwing them more meat. You can't appease a mob when it's driven by bloodlust. Of course, any sane adult who hasn't been mesmerised by this intolerant ideology will know that there was nothing remotely hateful in what Murphy said. In fact, her criticism of puberty blockers is entirely in line with the conclusions of the interim Cass report, which led to the closure of the Tavistock Paediatric Gender Clinic in London. In the report, it was found that there is a lack of secure evidence regarding the safety of puberty blockers. And as we are learning more about this treatment, the experts are lining up to oppose it. In June, the NHS announced that puberty blockers would be limited to children on clinical trials. Following similar reviews, Finland, Sweden and Norway have also implemented restrictions. Last month, there was an open letter to the Wall Street Journal by 21 leading experts in paediatric gender treatment. They were writing to oppose the view that gender-affirming care is best for children and pointed out that the common claim that puberty blockers reduce the risk of suicide is simply not backed up by the evidence. Unsurprisingly, this open letter went largely unreported. When children are put on puberty blockers, in almost all cases, this leads to cross-sex hormones, and the risks are now becoming clear: sterility, depression, lifelong regret, and all of this disproportionately impacting young people with autism or those who are simply gay. Studies show that in the vast majority of cases, feelings of gender dysphoria in youth are resolved by puberty. So why are we blocking the cure? And given the mounting evidence of the dangers of puberty blockers, why is there not a serious discussion taking place about banning them altogether? Why are medical experts willing to experiment on the most vulnerable in society on the basis of a kind of intuition that flies in the face of the evidence? As Roisin Murphy said in her Facebook post, little mixed-up kids are vulnerable and need to be protected. What's so controversial about that? Murphy is being demonised for daring to speak the truth. She's being punished for heresy, made an example of so that the rest of us will keep our mouths shut. But this won't last long. The overwhelming majority of the public know that she is correct. So too do the medical experts, the politicians and the commentariat, who up until now have been so terrified to speak their minds. But once we all stop being afraid, the power of the mob will dissipate. And surely at this point, it's only a matter of time. And my studio guests this evening are Paul Cox and Josh Howie. Paul, have you had a good week?
I've had a good week. My daughter turned 14 this week, so I'm now officially redundant.
Officially old.
Yeah, I'm officially old, of course. I've been old for some time now. I'm in my mid-40s. But, yeah, she only wants me for my money now, and she's going to be disappointed, I think.
As do all children. They're just waiting for you to die so they can inherit the lot of it.
Exactly, yeah.
Hate to be so cynical near the start of the show. What about you, Josh? You've got 5 of them, so maybe...
Yeah, my son's 14.
Yeah.
He went out on a date with Paul's daughter. And, we're going to be grandparents.
Goodness, well, that's lovely news. What a lovely family-orientated start to the show. We're going to get some lovely questions from our studio audience, hopefully. Let's have a look. Our first question is from Paul. Where's Paul? Hi, Paul.
Hi. Is it possible for hotel staff to speak freely when they have a Pride event?
Yeah, this was a great story. I read this week. There was a... basically, there was Pride in Manchester. It was the hotel, I think it was the Malmaison Hotel. And someone who was sitting in the lobby, someone who was attending Pride and staying at the hotel, overheard the members of staff on the front desk saying something that they found offensive. In fact, what they said was that men are men and women are women and there's no in-between. So, you know, science. And not only, so did you read about this, Josh? Because not only did this person get offended and complained, and now there's an internal investigation at the hotel, they had to take their headphones out to eavesdrop on the conversation that they were then offended by.
Yeah, and I don't think it was the desk, it was like, it was in a cafe. Like part of the hotel. Yeah, but that's it, exactly. Eavesdropping in on a private conversation.
Yeah.
And then the person sort of apologised and said when they were confronted, but it just wasn't enough. And that's what we learned also from the Roisin Murphy thing. Yeah. Apologies, it's not enough. It's never enough.
No.
They just want you to assume their ideology 100%, and any challenge to it must be met with being fired.
I would go so far as to say never apologise. I'd say even if you're wrong. At this point, because what's the point? They're just going to go for you even more.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I 100% agree.
I mean, this is a weird one, isn't it? Like, just complaining. How does this person not see in the article they come across as the bad guy here?
Because they're reaffirmed all the time that they're not the bad guy.
Right.
There's now this status thing where certain views are totally and utterly protected. So therefore, if anyone was to say anything against it, it reaffirms their position.
Yeah.
What's happened here is we have absolutely no idea of the context either. That could have been taken completely out of contect.
Yeah.
They could have been talking in the third person about what they'd overheard.
Yeah, we don't know what they were saying. Exactly.
And of course, it's the dominant view as well, Andrew. It's not like the point of this is that it happened during a Pride event at a hotel which was hosting the Pride event.
Yeah.
So they were seriously looking to be victimised anyway. But
yeah, but so what? I mean, the idea that there's a Pride event on, therefore certain opinions are not allowed. It strikes me as really intolerant, the opposite of what Pride used to be about, which is about freedom of speech and freedom of expression, right?
Yeah, and Pride used to I mean, the alphabet people have now expanded so far that it includes so many vast groups of people that you couldn't identify them anyway. I mean, Pride was mainly about homosexual people and celebrating that. It's now way beyond that.
Well, it was about gay rights. Now it's mostly about straight people with a kink.
Yes.
I think that's a fair comment.
Yes.
Yeah, that's why I go.
Exactly. What I was going to say, Josh. OK, we've got a question now from Mike. Where's Mike? Hi, Mike.
Does the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air need an age warning?
You look like such a rapper there, Mike.
You do.
Yo, What's up, guys? It's the Fresh Prince.
Well, it's not just the Fresh Prince. So this was an article about, apparently there's a website. What's the website called, Josh? That you
Common Sense Media.
Common Sense Media.
Yeah.
And parents can write basically warnings on various shows. They've covered Friends. They say Friends is really offensive. They've covered Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Wow. Yeah.
I mean, that's offensive for different reasons, isn't it? Being so bad. Josh, I mean, look, this story strikes me as a bit of an odd one insofar as it looks a bit like a journalist just checking for something to write about. You know, it's like one of those times where they look up on Twitter, oh, look, a couple of people are offended, I'm going to pretend it's like a big deal.
Yeah, here's my 1,000 words, pay me 250 quid.
Exactly.
But still, it is interesting to see that you can basically pick apart anything.
Yeah, anything.
It doesn't matter what it is, that nothing will ever be right enough. And but also, what's interesting is it's the parents who are writing about this stuff that they watched themselves in the 90s. Right. So, in a way, if it turned them into such boring idiots, perhaps maybe people shouldn't be watching that stuff anymore.
Well, maybe. I mean, Friends as well. I mean, Friends did have some dark moments, which I really liked, but the idea that you would be offended or upset by it, why can't they just leave comedy alone? That's what I would like.
They're all comedy. All of it. Well, Buffy. I never watched Buffy, but I assume it wasn't a comedy. The rest
not
of
deliberately.
They were all comedies, weren't they?
It was a documentary.
Fresh Prince was a documentary based on a true life story. The Fresh Prince in particular was seen as very progressive at the time.
Right.
You know, it was a full black family, an educated black family, and the idea that that was offensive in some way. And like Josh said, a lot of these things are being commented by 30 and 40-somethings that would have watched it as teenagers. They weren't offended then. Why would they be offended now? Why would they be offended on behalf of their children, who probably don't care anyway?
Exactly. What I mean, they're going to put warnings. What next? The Cosby Show? You know.
Yeah, well, they probably should have warnings.
Maybe they should on that one. Maybe that's a bad example. We're going to move on to the next question from Aviv. Aviv, hi.
What's the difference between a Blade Runner and Just Stop Oil?
OK, so actually we're going to be debating ULEZ later. Now, Blade Runners, this is the name for the people who are smashing up all the cameras in London. Aviv, do you have a view on this? Grab the mic. What's your view?
Well, there are some different... So, first of all, obviously, both are illegal on the one hand, but I'd say one lot inconvenience people, the other lot perhaps don't.
Right,
but both are not legal, so...
Well, it's the criminality is the key point, isn't it? I mean, I think that's
perhaps the thing that's in common.
I mean, Josh, like... I'm all for protest. I think protest is a sign of a healthy society. I'm not for vandalism, and I don't care what the cause is.
No, absolutely. And also, it's costing resources and money to fix these. It's not like that's going to be... People who are against ULEZ, who are sort of going, oh, this is a good thing, and this is a sign of democracy. No, it's not going to...
Smashing up cameras,
Yeah, that's not what's going to stop it if you're against it. Peaceful protest and also elections.
And what
That's
about
what would stop it.
This comparison that Aviv is making with Just Stop Oil as well. I mean, Just Stop Oil sometimes also have committed crimes, vandalism, which is where they lose the sympathy of the public.
Well, absolutely. In the Venn diagram of vigilante groups, Just Stop Oil and the Blade Runners, the thing that brings them together is the criminality element in the middle there. One thing I would say, however, is we're much freer, particularly in mainstream media, to talk about Just Stop Oil in a kind of friendly way, and aren't they doing a good thing, really?
Yeah.
Whereas Blade Runners, we're constantly reminded that this is a criminal act. No one constantly reminds us that what Just Stop Oil are doing is a criminal act. So I think they both have their place. I'm on the same as you. I wouldn't want to stand in either of their ways. When there is a criminal element, it isn't helpful. But then sometimes laws are just made up.
Yeah, but I mean, on the other hand, I think you do... You see, I think with any cause, you alienate the very people that you should be sort of trying to get on side once you go into this criminal aspect, I think.
But I think there'd be a lot of people out there who'd argue differently in terms of Blade Runners, just because they are saving people £12.50 a day.
Well, yeah, that seems to be what it's about. OK, well, we've got another question from Andy. Hi, Andy.
Should the makeup artist on Bradley Cooper's new film have apologised?
Yeah, so this was the film about Leonard Bernstein. Bradley Cooper plays Leonard Bernstein and is obviously heavily made up by the guy who also did the makeup for Darkest Hour. Do you remember turned Gary Oldman into Winston Churchill? And this is a Japanese-American artist, Kazuhiro, who obviously is a brilliant makeup artist. Josh, they're describing this as Jew face. They're saying this is that it was an anti-Semitic
Well, some people are. I mean, as Corbyn would say, Bernstein. In-joke there. But yes, I think that people who are complaining, it's not the homogenous Jewish community you're saying, but there are some Jewish people who are complaining about this. And I think it comes down to a sort of the hypocrisy of seemingly within that sort of very progressive world of film is that you now are not supposed to play outside of your ethnicity and whatnot, except for Jews. And this goes back, and I know so everyone's heard this 1,000 times, you know, the whole David Baddiel thing.
Yes.
And so I think that's where people are upset. Judaism is an ethno-religion. This Japanese American makeup artist, if he had dressed me up as a Japanese person, people would be arguably outraged. Yes. But, you know, in a Jewish person's mind, that's a similar thing. Giving someone a big nose to portray them as a Jew is arguably offensive.
But what he was doing with the makeup was trying to replicate as close as possible what Bernstein looked like. And, in fact, his family were constantly showing up.
Yeah, but his family want the film to do well. They're not going to turn around afterwards and go, actually, you know.
But I don't think it was an anti-Semitic caricature. I think he was literally trying to replicate.
I know, but you could see how, for many people doing, you know, big noses and whatever, that they use that as a way to denigrate Jewish people.
Sure, but I think in this case they are trying to replicate what he looks like, rather than
exactly. But then it's like the whole idea. I guess it. No, I don't want to bring in other ethnicities and stuff like that as much as possible, but I could see why people are offended by it. It doesn't personally offend me. I think where I get more offended, because I actually review for the Jewish Chronicle, so I watch a lot of TV shows and usually with a Jewish angle to them, but it winds me up when there are non-Jewish people playing Jews, not necessarily because of the looks necessarily, but whether they fully capture how much we use our hands. Now, Avina is Jewish. I've never met you before, but I was straight away, Jew! Because of the way that he asked the question and whatever.
Josh is allowed to point and say Jew. That's not something I would do.
The point is, we Jews, we have our Judar on and whatever, so but it shouldn't take a big nose to make someone. They should be able to act it.
This is a similar thing to the question of whether straight people should play gay people in Hollywood, and we get this quite a lot, where the LGBT community get very outraged when someone is cast. But I kind of think just cast the best person, and I think that should be across the board. I mean, like Brokeback Mountain, they're gayer than I am, and they do it much more convincingly than I do. No, but people think I'm straight because I drink beer and I've got my own spirit level. But those guys seem very, very gay to me.
They seemed very, very gay to me.
Yeah, particularly that bit in the tent.
That seemed ultimately the most gay thing you could do, actually, in the tent.
Yeah.
I would say, with regards, I mean, obviously I'm not a Jew. I wouldn't have walked into the room and said, Avi's a Jew. I wouldn't have known. I'm not as tuned in.
It's weird because you walked in backstage and you were like that.
Yeah. I mainly recognise sort of overweight white people. They're my clan. But one thing I would say is this wasn't sort of. The makeup art. Two things I want to say about this very quickly is that the nose was slightly larger than his nose.
Was it?
I've covered this story a few times, and it was slightly larger. So you could say that there was an exaggeration.
Yes.
However, what's really interesting about this is that the makeup artist is having to come out and apologise. The little people have nothing to do with this, really, and he would have been considered a little person.
It's a bit racist against Japanese people.
It's not what I meant.
Getting into dodgy territory, so we're going to take a break. But next on Free Speech Nation, is Sadiq Khan's ULEZ scheme a rare example of a politician coming up with a long-term plan to solve a major problem, or a mean-spirited assault on some of the most vulnerable members of society? Two great guests will be here to debate this one. Do not go anywhere.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GBNews,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here On GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. London Mayor Sadiq Khan's ultra-low emission zone, or ULEZ, was expanded to cover the whole of Greater London on Tuesday. The scheme, under which cars which do not meet stipulated emission standards have to pay £12.50 a day to drive in London, has huge implications for the whole country and has aroused enormous debate. And on Friday, the Met Police announced that over 500 crimes involving stealing or damaging the ULEZ cameras have been recorded in just the last 5 months. Here to discuss this, I'm joined by the founder of British Weather Services and author of upcoming book Surviving Extreme Weather, Jim Dale, and the deputy editor of Spiked, Fraser Myers. So, Jim, can I come to you first about this? So, what are your views of ULEZ expanding to Greater London?
Well, as a meteorologist, we look at the environment, we look at the air, we measure it. This week, we're going into a little bit of a heat wave, as you might know by now. So that's going to be subsiding air. That's going to increase the pollution, whether you like it or not, or whether ULEZ is there or not. So that's going to happen. But I'm a big believer to be honest with you, I don't think anybody wants pollution. It's not a case of wanting pollution. I'm in favour of pollution. Nobody is. Yeah. Okay, so it's how we get rid of it, step by step, and I think ULEZ is part of that. It's part of it. Not just ULEZ, by the way. Also, other cities in this country and towns are going in a similar direction.
So you'd like to see ULEZ expanded across the country?
Yeah, I think ULEZ has got a bad name, if I can say that. It's become quite personalised, and I think we have to focus down and say this is more about better lives, healthier lives, rather than saying this is ULEZ, this is Sadiq Khan. So it's beyond that, and I want good health for everybody, and I don't want, as you'll find out this week, walking down, say, Marylebone Road or something, even with ULEZ, you're going to struggle in terms of the emissions that are put out, that are poisonous emissions from cars, from vehicles. Nobody would doubt that. No science would ever say that that's the opposite and we don't need to go there. What the problem is the financial side. And I would say one thing about the financial side, and that is this all started, and pollution starts, fossil fuel starts, with the fossil fuel companies. If you want the money to compensate those that have been disenfranchised by ULEZ, then I would suggest you knock on the door of the fossil fuel industry, who are earning billions.
Well, let me just bring in Fraser at this point, because I want to ask about whether or not you feel that ULEZ is effective to tackle precisely the kind of problems that Jim is outlining.
Well, one of the interesting things about ULEZ is that there's a lot of debate over the science. A lot of the science that Sadiq Khan has been using has been shown to have been fiddled in some way. So Sadiq Khan got Imperial College to produce a report. It was paid for by the London Mayor's office. It said all the things the London Mayor wanted to hear, that, you know, pollution was killing 4,000 people prematurely a year, that outer London is the worst place for pollution, and therefore, you know, ULEZ expansion should go ahead, and that will dramatically help people and save lives.
But you're not implying that he paid for those answers?
No, but then subsequently there was another report came out from the same university, from Imperial, a different group of researchers, and they were looking at the inner London ULEZ, and they said actually it didn't really make much of a difference. It didn't really cut nitrogen levels that much, and therefore it doesn't really make sense to make these kind of bold claims. Then the London Mayor's office gets on the phone to their original scientist, says, can we arrange a rebuttal? And they put out a joint statement saying that it's going to dramatically decrease pollution and it's going to save lives.
Right.
And then there have been other cases where a previous study, I think it was from 2018, Queen Mary University, said that the LEZ, which was the precursor to ULEZ, which just tackled lorries, vans and buses and coaches, that also found there's not going to be any effect on children's health. And so the Mayor's office rang up the scientists saying, you know, you shouldn't publish this work, we should change the conclusion.
Really?
They essentially said you should, you know, why are you saying this won't have an effect? That can't be right. And the scientists, good on them, stuck by their report. So if this scheme is so brilliant, if this scheme is going to dramatically transform people's lives in London, then you have to ask, well, why is the Mayor and City Hall essentially trying to bully scientists who disagree, or trying to have the findings of research changed in order to fit
Does this concern you, Jim? You know, if it's the case that actually ULEZ doesn't really make a difference, and if it is the case that City Hall are putting pressure on scientists, I mean, surely you wouldn't support that.
Well, first of all, I'm reticent about going into the political area. There's a political argument going on. We can see that quite clearly across the spectrum. So I'm more coming from the scientific point of view, and make it clear, scientists argue from time to time. They have throughout.
Yeah, they don't necessarily agree all the time.
No, they don't. That's how we make progress. That's what happens. Somebody says one thing, somebody says another. My idea or my theory is better than your theory.
But specifically,
that's how we move on.
But when Sadiq Khan is saying, I reject, he's not a scientist, and he's saying to scientists, I reject this. Can you change? But can you change your mind, please?
I don't know where that speech comes from. I don't know that. It's not. I'm not in the position where I can say that happened, or it was the right thing or the wrong thing. All I would say is the direction of travel as far as reducing pollution is concerned is the right one. I don't think there's a person. I was at I was out on the streets in Bromley on Tuesday with the team from GBNews, and many interviews, and many people came up. And some of them were anti, some of them were pro, they shook hands and all the rest of it, and we went in that direction. But nobody turned around and said, look, you know, we want pollution. But I keep coming back to this.
Yeah,
this is something...
But I don't think people are saying that as such. I think what they're saying is that they're concerned that if these are ineffective, and yet they're paying £12.50 a day, that's I think, the concern.
It's every little helps, as the saying goes, every little step. And that has been the case throughout history as far as science is concerned, as far as this. Now, if there are arguments going on with the politicians, absolutely fair. But as far as, you know, fair enough. But as far as I'm concerned, looking at the environment, looking at the science and all the rest of it, it's indisputable that if you take the worst polluting vehicles off the road, then you will get a lower pollution.
That's a fair argument, isn't it,
I think
Fraser?
Where Jim is right is that obviously no one is in favour of pollution, but what people are in favour of being able to drive their cars. You know, this is a tax that is going to hit the poorest Londoners. The Mayor's own research shows that it will disproportionately hit poor and disabled people who don't have the kind of options to use public transport. If you're thinking about certain professions like carers or you know, builders, people who are small tradesmen, they don't really have the option to switch to public transport. It's very expensive to switch to a new or an electric vehicle, and the Mayor's scrappage scheme certainly doesn't cover their ability to do that. They might buy a car on credit even, but, you know, we're in a time of very high interest rates, so that is going to be very difficult.
Fraser, can I just say that the poorest people in London don't have a car. Let's make that absolutely clear. They walk most of the places, and those are the ones most exposed. If you look at any scientific graphs, it's the poor that suffer. 1 in 5 people in the world, if you take the world, of deaths die of some kind of pollution. In other words, whatever it is.
Those facts are wrong. OK, final thought from Fraser, because we've actually got to wrap up now.
No, I just think it's really important to defend people's right to drive and to be able to go about London as they see fit, or elsewhere in the country, as we know these schemes are proliferating. It is important that people have mobility and that their travel isn't impeded by and that their cost of living isn't pushed on them.
OK. Well, this debate, no doubt, will go on and on, but we have to put an end there. Thanks ever so much to Fraser and Jim. Woo! And next up on Free Speech Nation, we're going to be meeting the students who have taken the fight to the culture warriors by setting up an organisation designed to fight for free speech at universities. First, let's get your latest weather.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GBNews.
Hello there, good evening. I'm Jonathan Vautry here with your GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. Hope you enjoyed your weekend. It is ending on a fairly fine note for many of us. A lot of clear intervals through the evening and overnight away from the far north of Scotland. That is going to remain a bit breezier and cloudier. Some mist and fog patches will form underneath those clear skies, particularly for eastern England, southeast England, but also Northern Ireland turning quite murky first thing on Monday morning. For most of us, though, it will be a fairly mild, warm start, temperatures around 14-15 degrees Celsius in a lot of our towns and cities. Once that mist and fog does eventually clear its way off, Monday promises to be a pretty glorious day for many of us. A good swathe of sunshine for the vast majority of the UK. It will be a bit breezy around the West Country, gusty along some coastlines here, and always cloud lingering across the very far north of Scotland. Drizzly outbreaks of rain for Shetland as well. But elsewhere in that sunshine, feeling very warm, widely into the mid-20s, if not the high 20s across southern England and Wales. High pressure sticks with us into the middle part of the week, but it reorientates itself, so we tap into a southerly airflow that allows us to feed in some even warmer conditions from continental Europe. So on the grand scheme of things, Tuesday looks like another pretty fine day for many of us. Again, still quite blustery across the southwest, some higher base cloud pushing in across Northern Ireland as well, turning the sunshine hazier, and cloud just still lingering across parts of Orkney near the Isle of Lewis. But still plenty of mats of sunshine to be had, and temperatures peaking around Wednesday and Thursday over 30 degrees Celsius.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton, for 2 hours packed full of unfiltered opinions, unique takes and fiery debates. I guarantee you blockbuster guests and exclusive reporting with no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I think there is a culture of collusion, quite frankly.
And no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in their home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the show. Free speech on university campuses remains a big talking point, with concerns that students are prevented from learning about difficult or contentious topics due to a rise in trigger warnings and cancel culture. 2 students were so determined to fight such forces that they set up Speak Easy, a student-led pro-free speech movement which is going from strength to strength. And on Wednesday night, the organisation will host its first event, a debate in Parliament on the motion, do private companies have the moral authority to censor legal online speech? So here to tell us more, I'm delighted to welcome Omar Lubak and Jack Barwell. So, Omar, I'm going to come to you first. You've been on the show before, of course. Now, Speak Easy, just talk us through why you set this up. You're at Royal Holloway, right?
So thanks for having me on again.
That's all right.
So as I was here last time with the Claire Fox situation, and we felt, so our personal debating societies and many debating societies all across the country was not doing enough for free speech. So there's multiple cases of it being cancelled. So in Royal Holloway, then in Cambridge with the Charlie Bentley Astor situation, and Jack Barwell's situation, which you will talk about in a moment.
Because you'd invited Claire Fox to speak, and that was cancelled, right?
Yeah, unfortunately.
And wasn't she speaking on free speech and talking about the need for debate?
The irony of it.
Well, maybe they were just trying to prove your point for you. You know, that maybe that's what it was.
Exactly. And one thing I found that's the biggest problem isn't really the activists. Obviously, the activists do play a role.
Yeah.
But activists do. They scream, they shout. But it's the people that, you know, listen to are too scared that they conform to the such thing. So, for example, one other thing that happened at my university. So, luckily, I organised a TEDx conference, and one of our speakers was Emma Burnell. He's actually been on GB News before, and she wanted to talk about her time where she was cancelled for for the self-ID bill.
Yes.
And her views on that. And she just wants to say, look, we shouldn't cancel people, we should talk to people. A reasonable idea, which everyone on TEDx supported. But they were scared that the progressive illiberals, because that's what they are, illiberals, will cancel her and, you know, didn't want to put stress on her and themselves.
Of course.
See, I had to fight for that. And if you do watch it on YouTube, she did talk about her time getting cancelled, and she loved her time with us because I did fight for her to have a free speech. And one reason why we set up Speakeasy was to stop situations like this.
And in Exeter as well. So Jack, you've got the same thing where you are. What sort of things have happened in Exeter?
Andrew, it's really important to say it's not just about student unions. Student unions matter and they can cancel speech. It is about the establishment groups on society, the people that have power, the people at the top of societies, like Debating Society where I was. They have the power and they can censor you. If they cancel your debate, if they won't let it go ahead, if the committee, because some of these committees, they run terribly, they get to vote to overturn debates that you want to put forward. I was chairman of a debating society last year, tried to do debates on things like Israel-Palestine, tried to do debates on gender issues, tried to invite speakers like Kelly J. Keane. She was labelled a Nazi sympathiser by the people that now run that society. That's how crazy these people are, Andrew.
They often do this thing of saying the security bills will be too high.
Absolutely, and it's great that the new free speech legislation has had some impact on changing that. We had a really funny meeting with our student union where they're like, we've magically changed our position on this year. Absolute rubbish. No, you haven't. You've been forced into it by the new free speech legislation. The unions are a problem, the debating society establishment's a problem, and I've given up hope, Andrew, on debating society establishments. That's why we're setting up Speakeasy. It will stand for free speech.
I think a lot of people watching this will be quite depressed by this because they'll be thinking, well, don't people go to university in order to be challenged?
A lot of people do, but because of the power that activists do, is that they feel scared to do it. So if you talk to these guys personally, what are your views on free speech? You think that we should cancel X, Y, Z speak? Say, no. But they don't want to be labelled racist, homophobe, transphobe, and, like, let me take a step back. our job here is, in a sense, to kind of give a voice to those voices, to make them feel comfortable enough to know, look, we're not going to listen to those, crazy, loony, progressive illiberals.
Yes.
We're going to, say our views and know that we are protected by people like Speakeasy, who stands for the right of free speech.
But when the NUS set up the notion of no platforming decades ago now, it was very specifically about fascists. It was about saying we don't want fascists on campus. The problem today, of course, is that people with reasonable points of view are branded as fascist, and they fall, therefore, under this.
Well, this is the issue, Andrew. I ran to be Debating Society president in Exeter because I thought that the members needed a say. The ordinary people in our society, they want free speech, and it's the establishments at the top that don't let it. I was branded a fascist. A campaign was started, Operation Stop the Fascists, to try and stop me becoming president simply for standing for free speech.
So because the fascists were very for free speech, that was their thing, wasn't it?
Yes.
That was why
That's the idiocy of the argument, is that you literally had to be a fascist to stand for free speech. We should have gone round the hall and gone, hands up if you're a fascist, because simply, if you were for free speech, you became a fascist. I very nearly won that election, Andrew. I came within 4 votes, and it was really sad that I wasn't able to win it, but at least that showed that 47% of our membership did not buy into the notion that you had to be a fascist to be for free speech, and that's why we're trying to show them there is an alternative. Speakeasy is that alternative.
So, talking to people like you, and then talking to other students that I've spoken to when I give talks on universities, I'm quite encouraged. A lot of students still want to have these debates and discussions, but a lot of people say that students are all snowflakes who don't want to discuss. Is that an unfair caricature?
I think it is. Again, it's just a loud minority because they are loud. We do think that's the majority of students. The fact is, a lot of students do want this. You can see the proof of how quick Speakeasy has grown. The school year hasn't even started, yet we already have free versions of Speakeasy, and it is growing.
Yes.
A lot of students want this, and you can see by the numbers coming to our events. And our first event is a debate in Parliament. Debating societies can't do it because they're too scared to do it.
And this is at the House of Lords this Wednesday.
A funny story is that before I left the Debating Society, this was actually given to them. So once everything happened, Baroness Fox kind of felt sorry for the situation, and Baroness Anne Jenkins, who's helping us run this event, and it's like, why don't Royal Holloway Debating Society have a debate at the House of Lords? I gave it. I said, guys, let's do this. Like, sorry, I'm busy. The funniest thing about it is that there wasn't even a date.
No. Well, you've got it now, and very, very quickly, Jack, how can people find out more about you?
They can go onto our Instagram pages. We've got an Exeter Speakeasy, we've got a Royal Holloway Speakeasy. They can come and attend the debate. We'll be doing a summary. And just very quickly, Andrew, you talk about attendance to events. We've set up our Exeter Speakeasy. The week we did a first event in Term 3 last year. We were the most attended political society in that week. We are fighting back. We're going to win this fight, and we need everyone to join us.
Jack and Omar, thanks very much for joining me. Next up on Free Speech Nation, musician and podcaster Winston Marshall will be here to discuss the success of the new movie Sound of Freedom and the attempt to destroy Roisin Murphy's career. Don't go away.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious?
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo,
there'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. One of the surprise movie hits of the summer in the US has been Sound of Freedom, which has outstripped some big blockbusters at the box office and is now set to arrive in the UK. The film is about a federal agent who tries to save children from a sex trafficking ring and is based on Timothy Ballard, who founded an anti-human trafficking organisation and is a former Department of Homeland Security agent. However, critics of the film say it lacks factual accuracy, while others have even claimed that it has links with the American far-right group QAnon, although these have been denied by the film's director. Let's take a quick look.
So you quit your job and you go and rescue those kids.
South of that river is all rebel territory.
So here to discuss this, I'm joined by the musician and podcaster Winston Marshall. Winston, thanks for joining me. So I want to start by talking about the way in which this film has been politicised in America. Can you give us some background to this?
Well, I had the pleasure, it's a weird sort of pleasure, but I saw the film about a month ago in the States, and incredibly moving. The entire theatre were in tears, and at the end of the film stood up and applauded. I've never experienced that in a film, and it's the story of Tim Ballard, as you said in the introduction, and not many people know this, but there are 50 million slaves today, 27 million of which are in forced labor and sex trafficking, and 35% of which are children. As far as I'm concerned, that is the greatest evil there is today on the face of the planet. I don't think many people would disagree with me. Well, at least I think that they wouldn't disagree with me. But bizarrely, it turns out the media and many people have come after this film. It's utterly shocking. If you see this film, and I implore your viewers and yourself, if you haven't, to go and see this film. It really is remarkable. Independent film made on a budget of $14.5 million. It grossed, it's now something like 180 million in the US. On July 4th, it beat Indiana Jones in the box office. That is massive. It's really a huge cultural phenomenon, and yet it's getting this backlash. I just can't put myself in the mind of people who would come after the film and what it takes to do that. Let me give you an example, if I can. Vox.com. I'm going to read this because it's astonishing. Vox.com wrote an article criticizing the film, finishing by writing, "Sound of Freedom is ultimately a form of extremist propaganda, and that extremism is at least as dark and dangerous as the very thing Sound of Freedom wants to combat." So the film, which wants to combat sex trafficking of the millions of children, is more dangerous than sex trafficking of the millions of children, according to Vox.com. It doesn't stop with them. It's Rolling Stone. I was very disappointed by an article in The Telegraph as well. It's like they're not really engaging with what this film is about. And I've been thinking about why is that? And part of the reason, I think, is the wrong people like the film. Trump has endorsed the film. Elon Musk has endorsed the film. Jordan Peterson has endorsed the film. And so they see it in this tribal warfare. They say those people are bad, and they can't distinguish that not everything that just because they disagree with those people doesn't write off everything that those people agree with. Anyway, that's one of a few things. The other possibility is that there are pedophile rings that people are trying to not have revealed. I mean, that's where you get into the conspiratorial. But one can't help think, but why would you not want to promote this film exposing and telling the great story of Tim Ballard, as you said, 12 years at Department of Homeland Security, exposing and uncovering these pedophile rings? Why wouldn't that be a story to celebrate? I'm lost for words thinking about it.
Like you say, it sounds very much like political tribalism. Let's not forget the Pope has also endorsed the film, so you would have thought that would count for something. We are
not the
out
Pope.
of time, Winston.
Andrew.
Yeah, we are running.
Now of the Pope supporters.
We are running out of time. I do want to ask you very quickly about the case of Roisin Murphy. You yourself have experienced cancellation within the music industry. Do you have anything to say about what's happened to her?
Well, the story gets more and more ludicrous. It seems like, although one source says that her label Ninja Tune they're not going to drop her, but they're no longer going to promote her album, which is, absolutely absurd. And then Rough Trade East in London, she had 2 gigs booked there at the end of the week, and those gigs have been cancelled. Why exactly, it's not clear. Look, this is happening now. It seems almost daily, but certainly weekly. Last week, it was Alice Cooper who got dropped from Vampire Cosmetics for saying that if a kid identifies as a tree, maybe that's not right. Also last week, Carlos Santana had to issued an apology for thinking if you're a girl, you're a girl, and you're a boy, you're a boy. Neo earlier this summer, it was the same thing. He's an American Grammy-winning R&B artist. His publicist put out an apology. There's Howard Donald from Take That. There's Craig Potter from Elbow. Macy Gray, you'll remember, had to apologize. And all of these are specific for the trans stuff, and I'm forgetting more, but there's many more artists. When it comes to this specific topic, and others, but the trans issue specific, if you dissent, you are punished. And so what happens then is that those of us who realize the evil that's going on and putting the kids on puberty blockers, as Roisin Murphy rightly condemned originally, those who are scared of professional repercussions end up just keeping their mouth shut. It's a total disaster. And in the music industry, self-expression is the sine qua non.
For the first hour of Free Speech Nation. Sorry, don't go away because there's a lot more to come.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good evening. I'm Jonathan Vautry here with your GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. Hope you enjoyed your weekend. It is ending on a fairly fine note for many of us. A lot of clear intervals through the evening and overnight away from the far north of Scotland. That is going to remain a bit breezier and cloudier. Some mist and fog patches will form underneath those clear skies, particularly for eastern England, southeast England, but also Northern Ireland turning quite murky first thing on Monday morning. For most of us, though, it will be a fairly mild, warm start, temperatures around 14-15 degrees Celsius in a lot of our towns and cities. Once that mist and fog does eventually clear its way off, Monday promises to be a pretty glorious day for many of us. A good swathe of sunshine for the vast majority of the UK. It will be a bit breezy around the West Country, gusty along some coastlines here, and always cloud lingering across the very far north of Scotland. Drizzly outbreaks of rain for Shetland as well. But elsewhere in that sunshine, feeling very warm, widely into the mid-20s, if not the high 20s across southern England and Wales. High pressure sticks with us into the middle part of the week, but it reorientates itself, so we tap into a southerly airflow that allows us to feed in some even warmer conditions from continental Europe. So on the grand scheme of things, Tuesday looks like another pretty fine day for many of us. Again, still quite blustery across the southwest, some higher base cloud pushing in across Northern Ireland as well, turning the sunshine hazier, and cloud just still lingering across parts of Orkney, near the Isle of Lewis. But still plenty of mats of sunshine to be had, and temperatures peaking around Wednesday and Thursday over 30 degrees Celsius.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
There's plenty more still to come on Free Speech Nation this week, including a Finnish politician going on trial for hate speech, our regular look at the news stories from the arts world, and more questions from the audience for myself and my comedian panellists. But first, let's get a news update from Aaron Armstrong.
Very good evening to you. Let's get you up to date with the headlines from the GB Newsroom. 2 people have been killed and a third injured following a series of collisions in Coventry this morning. A pedestrian struck by a car on Gosford Street and a cyclist on Woodway Lane died of their injuries. The driver then made off after colliding with a house a short distance away. A 33-year-old man's being questioned by police. Now, the government is under pressure to reveal the exact number of schools at risk of collapse due to crumbling concrete. Labour is planning to force a vote to compel the Prime Minister to publish a list of all schools at risk, with more than 100 told to fully or partially close days before the new term begins. Experts are warning the problem is complicated by the coexistence of asbestos in schools and other public buildings. Shadow Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson says the government should have acted sooner.
appreciate that lots of parents across the country will be concerned because, sadly, many children are not going to be able to return to education or will be moved into porta cabins or alternative accommodation because of the risk that this kind of crumbly concrete is going to pose. It all feels very last minute, and what we're calling on the government to do is to publish a full list of all of the schools affected so that parents can be confident about where the problems are, and if they're not prepared to do that, we'll force a vote in Parliament this week to make it happen.
More than 800 migrants crossed the English Channel in small boats on Saturday. It is the highest number on a single day this year. At least another 2 small boats have been intercepted today, bringing the total number of people entering the country illegally past 21,000 this year. However, that's still significantly lower than this time last year, when 25,000 people had made the journey. Tesco staff are to be offered body cams after a significant rise in violent attacks. The chief executive, Ken Murphy, says he's been forced to increase security measures after physical assaults rose by 1/3 since last year. Writing in the Mail on Sunday, he's called for tougher laws to make abuse or violence towards retail workers an offence, which would result in longer sentences. A red weather alert's been issued for parts of Spain as storms sweep across the country. Residents in Alcanar on the east coast near Barcelona have been told to stay indoors as water floods the streets. And emergency alerts have been sent to people's mobiles in Madrid, with up to 4 inches of rain forecast in just 12 hours. And a person's died and tens of thousands of people are stranded in the Nevada desert. It comes after torrential rain. It hit the Burning Man Festival and turned it into a mud bath. US authorities have closed access to and from the site, and festival goers have been asked to conserve food and water. More rain's expected over the next few days, prompting some to leave the event on foot. Well, this is GB News. I'll be back with more in about an hour's time. Now it's over to Free Speech Nation.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. The observant among you will notice that Paul Cox is now wearing a tie, which he wasn't before. I'm going to try and introduce a spot the difference element to the show.
I was wearing a tie before. This is the Mandela effect, isn't it?
Oh, is that right?
In your mind, do you think?
In my mind.
Yeah.
Also, I've taken off my fake nose.
Yes, that's right. And in the next section, I'm going to be wearing antlers. And we'll see if anyone notices at home. It's a fun game. Anyway, let's get some more questions from the audience. Our first question is from Alan. Hello, Alan.
Hi there. Hi, guys. Thankfully and finally, the police are under new management. Do you think they should be allowed to back political causes?
Yeah, this is a very interesting question. It's one we've discussed quite a lot. The Met Police Chief this week has basically said, this is Sir Mark Rowley, by the way, he said that officers can no longer express support for what they call woke causes, taking the knee, flying that ugly rainbow flag everywhere, while they're on duty anyway, because that means they're not impartial. This strikes me as fair enough, Josh, because these are specifically ideological statements.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's the fact it's gotten to this point, the fact that we've heard every few months, Orla Braidman just going, OK, police, just get on with policing, get on with policing. Yeah. The fact that was a couple of weeks, last week, where you had a 73-year-old social worker arrested or I don't know if she was fully arrested, questioned by the police in West Yorkshire for taking a photo of a sticker.
Yeah.
And that was enough for them to go in. And basically, West Yorkshire is the second highest crime rate in the country. 90% of their crimes...
What was the sticker?
Sorry, the sticker was a trans... sort of, there are only 2 sexes, or whatever. But she didn't even stick the sticker on. She just took a photo of the sticker to show her girlfriend.
I mean, that's obviously a waste of police time.
Absolutely.
Clearly, There's a lot of this stuff going on, isn't there, Paul? And I think a lot of people are sort of saying, for a police officer to be taking the knee publicly or flying the pride flag, that's the equivalent to them flying a Che Guevara flag or something like that. It's a very much... And they're supposed to be able to serve without fear or favour. And what if people don't agree with them? They're going to be intimidated by the police, aren't they?
Absolutely. And there's a good reason that the police are told to remain neutral in terms of politics, because the optics are terrible. For anything that goes wrong in the future, they can look back and say, well, that's because they were dancing with the pride flag around their head in their underpants, or whatever they were trying to do to fit in. And the idea that the police should be involved in any of this stuff, to me, is ludicrous anyway. There's only one job they need to do successfully, and that's enforce the law. So as long as they stick to that, A lot of things can't be questioned then.
I haven't actually seen police dancing in their underwear, but I saw them do the Macarena, which is more offensive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll send you the clip.
No, please do. That'd be nice. OK, we're going to move on to another question. This one's from Mark. Where is Mark? Hello, Mark.
Good evening, guys. My question's quite topical. Do we need another couple of Chinooks when we've already got 60? And I believe we're waiting on software for some of those as well.
Yeah, so the Chinooks are 2.5 billion. This is to do with former Defence Secretary Ben Wallace. Apparently threatened to cancel a deal with the US over Chinook, the helicopters, by the way, due to spiralling costs. Many defence experts think Wallace is right, but supporters of the deal say they've linked it to his disappointment that the US didn't back him for the NATO Secretary-General post. What do you think?
Yeah, I think there's probably maybe some truth to that.
Right. Well, it's speculative. Speculative.
I'm speculating that it's definitely true.
Right. Yeah, I mean, what do you think about this?
Well, Ben Wallace is seen as a very, very good Defence Secretary. I come from Portsmouth, and I know a lot of people who work in the Royal Navy, and they all understand Ben Wallace because he understands them. And when Ben Wallace says something, it's genuinely likely to be true and in tune with what's going on in the military. I mean, let's not forget that we've mothballed a load of stuff. So there is stuff in storage that might not work, but if you just tinker around with it a bit, you could probably get it up to working standard. There's probably a lot more going on behind the scenes, but we don't need to go and spend millions of pounds.
No,
billions.
Billions.
Sorry, yeah, same thing to me.
We're going to move on to a question now from Pete. Where is Pete?
Evening, guys.
Yeah.
Is Alice Cooper transphobic?
Do you think Alice Cooper is transphobic?
No, I don't think so. I read the article about what you said.
Yeah, it's an odd one, isn't it? A man called Alice being accused of this, but anyway, he's been dropped by a cosmetics company. Winston Marshall was talking about this earlier, and all he was doing was basically questioning the rush to perform trans operations on kids, and he called it a fad, didn't he?
Yeah, which is arguably what a lot of people argue it is.
And it's an opinion.
It's an opinion, but if you look at the influence that's happening in schools, what's happening online, and you can sort of see figures where it show like anorexia have gone down at exactly the same rate that this stuff has gone up. But again, you've got the company that have cancelled it. I think they're based in New Orleans, and they do all sort of eye makeup and stuff, and. It's ridiculous, and it's going to backfire on them in the long run when the more information that's coming out, and America is arguably a year or so behind Europe, particularly the UK, on this matter. But the more of these reports, more people come out as detransitioning and stuff, the worse these companies are going to look.
I do think the UK is sort of blazing the trail here. In many ways, and I think the US is playing catch-up. We should say this was Vampire Cosmetics. It wasn't like L'Oreal or something, because Alice Cooper wouldn't be the pin-up for that, would he?
No, he probably wouldn't.
No.
I mean, what is always shocking to me is when people are shocked that rock stars don't comply with whatever narrative they're told to comply with. I mean, he makes some really good points. All this stuff is just questioning. And you've got to understand, this is a 70-odd-year-old man who doesn't come from an era where children identified as rabbits or trees.
Well, they did, but they weren't taken seriously.
Well, no, they weren't, and they were all on the drugs that they were taking back then, weren't they? So he's doing nothing wrong. He's just... We just seem to have this dogma, this necessity to comply to things all the time. And if people don't, the people in charge just get terrified. I don't know. I don't know what's going on there.
It's very, very depressing. OK, we've got another question now. Is this from Mike? Do we have a Mike? Hi, Mike.
Andrew, should we be in crisis about 100 schools being closed for potential concrete problems when there are 32,000 which are OK?
So, this has been the story that's been running all week, and we've talked about it a lot on Headliners here. And this morning, Jeremy Hunt said the government will spend what it takes to make schools safe from these, what are they called, aerated...
concrete. But it's 100 that we know of, but they're saying it's up to 7,000.
Right.
And for me, it's just like, if one child is doing their classes on Zoom because of what this then for me that's a tragedy.
Yeah, you hate all that, don't you?
I absolutely loathe it, and I think it's already there's a generation of children behind where they would be because of what happened obviously over COVID, but these are like self-inflicted wounds. But the people who are going to suffer are our children, let alone our bank balance.
But there is a safety issue, though.
Absolutely. But this is, of course, should have been dealt with. And there's a lot of people now, everyone's pointing fingers, did it come under Labour or whatever. The fact is, we've had Tories in, they've had 13 years, the whistleblowers are coming out saying that they've known repeatedly over the last few years about this issue, and they kept on kicking it down the road, and here we are now.
Yeah, any thoughts on this, Paul?
Who would have thought making schools out of aero bars wouldn't last?
I know.
I mean, I don't know where the surprise is here, really. Josh has nailed it there, to be honest. The kids that are going to be affected have gone through the pandemic, something very unique to them.
Yeah.
And I know from personal experience, and I'm sure Josh does, that it has impacted them more than we understand already. So for this to happen now, although I do agree with the point that there is probably a small percentage of schools, even if it goes up to 7,000, that are affected, and we, you know, Mike, you've made the simple mistake there of letting statistics and facts getting in the way of the issue.
Yeah.
So try and learn. But it's incredible that it's got to this point.
Yeah, absolutely. OK, well, we've got another question. This one came in from Diane on email. Diane says, do operas need more diversity? Now, this is to do with this Welsh opera singer who said that the arts have to have more LGBTQ representation in order to survive. Elgan Lear Thomas, her name is, or Clear Thomas, sorry. Now, I wasn't just...
His name.
Is it a bloke? I don't know. Yeah. But the point is, I think the arts have quite a lot of gays in already. I'm not saying kick them out. I'm saying there's a lot of them.
Really? That's it? Gay people like opera, do they?
They like the
arts. I've never heard that.
No, I know.
This is
hardly a crisis, is it?
No, it's hardly a crisis. And what's actually even funnier is when you read the article, you realise this person, whether it's a man or a woman, is 33 years old.
I love that we don't know.
Yeah, 33 years old, and they're bemoaning the fact that they grew up under Section 28. Section 28, that came in 1989. This person was born in 1990. And I figured out, and Little Britain, they say, oh, I grew up in a little Welsh village and I didn't know what gay was. When he was 13, Little Britain came out. Right. With Daffyd and the only gay. This is the idea this person didn't know of any homosexuals until they were 16 or whatever is ridiculous. And the idea that this is going to be changed because of having a few more gay people within opera is
I mean,
insane.
honestly, I've heard people complain about, like, the endemic institutional homophobia of the theatre industry. I'm like, what are you talking about? It's heterophobic. They're all gay. It's like, I don't know what's going on with the world.
In the arts is the only place that I am a minority.
Yeah, right.
And it is absolutely fascinating. It smacks
It's
of...
desperate to be victim
Well,
all the time.
It smacks exactly of that. It also smacks of the fact that someone... He sounds like he's not getting work. So it's like trying to generate a gay opera for him to be in. And I'm sure if they did generate one, he might not get in anyway.
Right, exactly.
And he is a he, by the way. The picture certainly looks like a man, and I'm not going to apologise for that at any point.
There's no way for opera not to be gay.
It's one of the gays. It's like...
Let's make opera straight.
That's the new campaign for the channel. Yeah. I like it. OK. So, we should do that. Next on Free Speech Nation, we're going to be speaking to the Finnish politician who went on trial this week for hate speech simply for giving her views on marriage and quoting the Bible. See you shortly.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton, for 2 hours packed full of unfiltered opinions, unique takes and fiery debates. I guarantee you blockbuster guests and exclusive reporting with no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I think there is a culture of collusion, quite frankly.
And no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day.
The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. Finnish politician Päivi Räsänen has been on trial this week for hate speech and ethnic agitation after making public her belief that marriage is between a man and a woman. Räsänen was tried for violating Finland's hate speech laws on 3 occasions, in a tweet, a 2004 church pamphlet and in a 2019 radio interview. A verdict in the trial, which obviously will have huge implications for free speech around the world, is now expected by the 30th of November. So here to tell us about the trial, I'm delighted to welcome Paul Coleman, Executive Director of ADF International, who helped with Päivi's defence. Paul, can I just start? This is not the first time that Päivi has been to court. In fact, she won her original trial and the state dragged her back in, isn't that right?
That's exactly right. It was over a year ago that she was fully acquitted in the district court. The Finnish system allows for a full appeal, so this isn't appeal on a narrow point of law. The whole case is being retried again, which now means that it's been going on now for over 4 years. There's been hours of police interrogation, about a year-long police investigation. Then there was the first trial. Now we've had this trial, and it really shows in these sort of hate speech cases that eventually the process becomes the punishment.
What we'll be confused about is they'll be assuming she must have posted some rampant homophobic tweet. She actually posted a Bible verse and questioned the local government's the logic of backing Helsinki Pride. That, to me, doesn't sound particularly offensive.
That's exactly what happened. Päivi is a member of the Lutheran Church. It became an official sponsor of the Helsinki Pride Parade. And she thought about what to do. She prayed, then she went and found her Bible, took a picture of some Bible verses, posted it to Twitter, and essentially asked, how does the teaching of the Lutheran Church and its decision to sponsor this parade align with the teachings of Scripture? She thought nothing more of it. There were some comments underneath, like there always is. That was the end of it, she thought, until she found out the police were investigating this for a potential hate speech offence. And here we are 4 years later, on it goes.
And the prosecution in the trial this week, they've been saying that effectively it's not her faith in Christianity that is the problem. It's the way in which she chooses to interpret the Bible, that can amount to criminality. And those are their words. This is very, very disturbing. They also said that in the pamphlet she wrote, where she equated homosexuality with being sinful, that in itself amounted to hate speech and criminal behaviour, in which case we better round up everyone in the Vatican, right?
Well, exactly. And the prosecutor keeps on saying this case is not about theology, it's not about Christian teaching. But if you look at the arguments that the prosecutor has submitted, the written arguments before court, and then hearing her in court this weekend at the district court, it's clear that it is absolutely about the Bible and about historical Orthodox Christian teaching. The prosecutor goes into great length in the legal submissions to explain how psychologically damaging the concept of sin is and how it can cause real harm. And in fact, it was this word sin that Päivi used in her tweet that she lifted directly from the words of Scripture. And so it's absolutely about the Bible. Christian teaching. And as you say, it won't just be, if the prosecutor is successful and if this results in a conviction, then this won't be the only case by any means. There will be cases throughout the country because this has been historical teaching of Christianity since its inception.
Yes, and if they roll this out, they might be surprised when they're having to bring Islamic preachers into court as well. I'm sure that won't go particularly well. But Päivi Räsänen is here herself now. Päivi, can you tell us how it has been for you this week, having to go through this?
I have to say that just now I'm very happy that these days are over. So I was quite nervous when I was waiting for this trial, because I know that it is not only about me, it is about the freedom of speech and freedom of faith for all Finnish Christians. So, but I was happy that I could defend myself, and I'm also very thankful for those who have supported me. For example, ADF International and Paul Coleman and my lawyer and so on. So I'm relieved now that it is over, and now I'm waiting for the result in 3 months. So.
Well, your critics will say that the problem here is that you obviously hate gay people and you were trying to incite hatred against gay people. What would you say to that?
I absolutely deny that I have had any hatred against gay people or any other people. I believe, and my faith and my beliefs are that these opinions and these beliefs, they rise out of love, because I believe that God loves every human being. All human beings are equal. They are created as the image of God, but we all are sinners. And I think that it is God who says what is sin or what is not. What I have spoken, it is about, I would say, something that is classical Christianity, that Christians have believed for 2,000 years. So it is not about hatred. And I have to say that I feel that it is quite painful to be accused of hatred, because I think that it is about love, not hate.
Oh, well, you know, the whole point of a free society is that people can have different views. I do disagree with your view on homosexuality being sinful, but you're entitled to hold those beliefs and I'm entitled to hold mine. That surely is how a society has to be run. What will the implications be if you're found guilty here? What will happen later down the line?
This is a very good question, because if I would be condemned, it would mean that also those writings, for example, my book, it would be banned. And we have thousands of similar writings or statements in Finland, and also they would be in danger. So I think that if I would be convicted, it would start some kind of persecution of Christians. And it is not only about Christians. It is the freedom of speech is important for everyone, also for example, gay people or anyone. So I think that my calling is now to fight for the freedom of speech in Finland. And of course, this decision of the court, it will have ramifications also outside Finland, because in other European countries we have quite similar legislations as we have in Finland.
Absolutely. Well, Paul, I just want to bring you in finally. You've documented extensively the various hate speech laws that exist across Europe. What's it going to take to get these various governments to realise that even if you find someone's views unpleasant, they have to be free to have those views in a liberal democracy?
Absolutely. And I think that many people might hear this and come away with the takeaway, oh, it sounds really bad in Finland, or I'm glad I'm not there. And as you say, we have similar laws across Europe. This is a European, indeed a Western problem, a Western phenomenon, the rise of hate speech laws. These are vaguely worded. They are extremely subjective. They can be arbitrarily enforced against anyone who disagrees with the orthodoxies of the day. And they need wholesale reform and repeal. And failing that, then we need to continue to win these sorts of cases. So at least, even if these bad laws remain on the books, they can be interpreted in a way that protects freedom of speech.
Well, Päivi Räsänen and Paul Coleman, thanks ever so much for joining me tonight. So next on Free Speech Nation, David Oldroyd-Bolt will be here with his regular roundup of arts and culture news. But first, let's get your latest weather.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good evening. I'm Jonathan Vaughtry here with your GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. Hope you enjoyed your weekend. It is ending on a fairly fine note for many of us. A lot of clear intervals through the evening and overnight away from the far north of Scotland. That is going to remain a bit breezier and cloudier. Some mist and fog patches will form underneath those clear skies, particularly for eastern England, southeast England, but also Northern Ireland turning quite murky first thing on Monday morning. For most of us, though, it will be a fairly mild, warm start, temperatures around 14-15 degrees Celsius in a lot of our towns and cities. Once that mist and fog does eventually clear its way off, Monday promises to be a pretty glorious day for many of us. A good swathe of sunshine for the vast majority of the UK. It will be a bit breezy around the West Country, gusty along some coastlines here, and always cloud lingering across the very far north of Scotland. Drizzly outbreaks of rain for Shetland as well. But elsewhere in that sunshine, feeling very warm, widely into the mid-20s, if not the high 20s across southern England and Wales. High pressure sticks with us into the middle part of the week, but it reorientates itself, so we tap into a southerly airflow that allows us to feed in some even warmer conditions from continental Europe. So on the grand scheme of things, Tuesday looks like another pretty fine day for many of us. Again, still quite blustery across the southwest, some higher base cloud pushing in across Northern Ireland as well, turning the sunshine hazier, and cloud just still lingering across parts of Orkney, the Isle of Lewis. But still plenty of amounts of sunshine to be had, and temperatures peaking around Wednesday and Thursday over 30 degrees Celsius.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners on TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything, I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. So it's time for our regular look at the latest news from the world of culture and the arts. And here to join me once again, it's the broadcaster and author, David Oldroyd-Bolt. So, David, there's always a lot to talk about, but I think you want to start with a story about the Pope.
Yes, the Pope has put his foot in it again. He seems to have an unfortunate fondness for dictators. So after rather recently saying that Russians should be proud of their imperial heritage, proud of the heritage of Peter the Great and Catherine II, both of whom essentially colonised Ukraine, wiped out the language and committed mass murder, the Pope has now gone to China and said, and exhorted Chinese Catholics, who are a minority and a greatly suppressed one, to be good Chinese citizens.
Interesting. We might even have the tweet that he actually said this. I mean, there it is. You know, and he's effectively, as Damien Thompson there, who's quote tweeted him there, sort of suggested he's supporting the CCP there. It does feel like an odd thing for the Pope to be doing. Should someone else be running his Twitter account, maybe?
I think perhaps someone else ought to be running the Vatican, but that's a different story.
But is this just not justifiable with, render unto Caesar what are Caesar's? Is there...
I think it's rather different when you have, with the Chinese Communist Party, a regime that is currently engaged in genocide on religious and racial grounds against the Uyghur people, the Muslim inhabitants of northern China. He's got a rather odd history, I think, with the Chinese Pope Francis. For instance, in 2018, he gave the Chinese Communist Party the right to nominate Catholic bishops, which is an extremely odd thing to do with a dictatorial state.
Yes.
And he has, ever since the beginning of the Russia-Ukraine conflict, exhorted that there be a peaceful solution. But the only instance that the Pope has spoken out about a particular atrocity was when he spoke about the killing of Dugina, who is the daughter of Alexander Dugin, Putin's favourite philosopher, who said at one point that it is absolutely right to kill the Ukrainians.
Right.
When she was asked about this, she said yes, she rather agreed. She was killed in a car bombing, which the Ukrainians have not accepted total responsibility for, but that is the only instance. None of the blanket bombings has the Pope spoken out about.
Well, that's the point, isn't it? Once you start making comments about these international affairs, the absences of your commentary are also noted.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, is it just the case that maybe he just doesn't really know much about it? Is it coming from a place of ignorance, I suppose I'm saying?
That would be a charitable reading, and I think perhaps we should be charitable, being Christian. But I think one of the big problems is that, as a Catholic, you're expected to follow the Pope as a moral lead.
Yes.
And given that the moral lead on both China and the Ukraine-Russia war, I should say, is perfectly pellucid and totally obvious to anybody with an even vaguely functioning moral compass, it is slightly disconcerting and difficult, therefore, for Catholics to pray each week for the Pope and his leadership when he seems to be giving such poor leadership on the overwhelming moral issues of the time, certainly when it comes to geopolitics.
Let's move on now to a different story. Simon Rattle, who I think is probably the only conductor who people generally know about in the mainstream, right? For some reason, he's become the go-to.
Yeah, indeed.
What's happened here?
So Sir Simon Rattle, we must give him his full due, who is an extraordinary conductor, a man who's brought both forgotten or rather neglected composers of the past to the fore and done a great deal to support new music in Britain and education, has been for the past 6 years the conductor of the London Symphony Orchestra, which is a very short time considering that he was for 18 years at the City of Birmingham Symphony Orchestra and then for 16 years at the Berlin Philharmonic Orchestra, the youngest chief conductor in its history and the only Englishman so far, the only Briton. And what seems to have happened here is that Simon Rattle has fallen very deeply out with the musical establishment of this country. Some of it has to do with Brexit. He has pointed out, quite rightly, that the government or the government since 2016 have been horrendously slow to fix the visa problems faced by international touring musicians. Another big thing is that he thought, and I think most people who attend concerts there would agree, that the Barbican Concert Hall in London has an appalling acoustic. It's not fit for purpose.
And this is where the LSO is based.
This is where the LSO is based. It's a 1960s concrete monstrosity, which has had a lot of money spent on it over the years with various bits of baffling and extra additions inside the hall to make the acoustic better. It hasn't worked. So he suggested, look, the Museum of London is moving from London Wall by St Paul's Cathedral. There's a big space that's going to be empty. Let's fundraise, fundraise, fundraise. George Osborne, while Chancellor, seemed to be on board with this, and then it went away. And let's have a truly world-class concert hall. This didn't happen. He fell out with the Arts Council and its then head, Sir Nicholas Kenyon, and essentially he's slung his hook and gone back to Germany.
Is this the reason he's given for leaving the LSE?
It was one of the reasons he's given. He also, he decries Brexit, and he decries heavily the fact that the city of Berlin spends more on culture and cultural education than the whole of the UK.
Well, that's an interesting point, isn't it? Why is it that we in this country, I mean, is it just that we have a Conservative government that don't particularly value the arts? Is that why they don't spend enough?
No, I think it's because we in this country have tended to think that though there should be some straight provision for the arts, that the majority of it should come from corporate sponsorship or individual donation.
Yes.
Now, that's, I think, a model that works extremely well in America, where you have very, very generous tax breaks for both corporate and personal giving.
Yes.
But given that that model is not replicated here to nearly the same degree, I think we have to have a conversation about how we fund the arts. Now, I think for most of us, whether on the left or the right, having a fully funded arts sector with good educational possibilities so that people of all backgrounds can be involved in the arts is a mark of a civilised country.
Well, yeah, because people will think that Simon Rattle and the type of music that he produces is elitist, I suppose. Isn't
Well, but this is a working-class boy from Liverpool, whose father was in the Merchant Navy, who, through good city education systems and through being talented, managed to rise to the very top of his profession and has been an absolute idol for a great many people from around the world. So the fact that he is being made, or rather that he feels he has to leave his homeland once more, is, I think, rather sad. He has, it must be said, remained a resident of Germany while London Symphony Orchestra conductor, and he is married to a Czech and 3 children there, so perhaps there are other personal ties playing a part. But I think it is a sadness that he's only been there for a relatively short time, and as we saw with his concert last Sunday at the BBC Proms, when he gave a performance of Francis Poulenc's vocal piece that he gave some years ago at the Prom, and then Mahler's Ninth Symphony, which is one of his great calling cards. Every review is a 5-star review.
Yes,
Every
I saw,
review is
yeah.
staggered.
Yeah.
So I think it's a terrible shame for British music and for our concert life that we're losing him.
Interesting to hear that you're not a fan of the Barbican. Brutalism not your thing, David?
Not terribly, no. I think that those who have to live around it, well, those who live in it, it's fine. You get a wonderful view. Those who have to live around it and you have to look at
You have to look at it, yes.
It's a terrible
Well, I
shame
used to
for them.
work there, so I got quite accustomed to it,
Yeah.
to be honest. Final story of tonight. So this is to do with a new campaign relating to Handel.
Yeah, well, it's relating to St George's Hanover Square in London, which is a beautiful 18th century church. And just before Christmas, a part of the portico roof, the front porch roof, fell in. And that actually, it covers the pavement on St George's Street.
Yep.
So anybody wanting to walk down there now has to go around a great deal of scaffolding. It's a church that Handel worshipped at a great deal, where many of his works were given performances. So any of your viewers and listeners who are able, on the 7th and 8th of September, that's this Thursday and Friday, can go along from 3 p.m, and there is an open performance of bits of Handel's Messiah that you can take part in. It's £5 each, and this will raise money, hopefully, for £500,000 is the total needed to repair the portico. This will raise money for this great building with a wonderful historical alliance, and also it is one of the great churches of London. So anybody who's able, just pop in for half an hour, sing along. The conductors and the players will change throughout the 24 hours, but I think it'll be a wonderful historical event and something that we can all do of altruism and good civic pride.
Absolutely, and that website address is on the screen right at the moment. This is in Hanover Square.
Yeah, Hanover Square in Mayfair, just around the corner from Oxford Circus, so you've got no excuse not to be able to get there.
Yep.
And I think you will find it an edifying and enjoyable experience.
David Aldrich-Bolt, as usual, a great pleasure. Please come back very soon.
Thank you.
And after the break on Free Speech Nation, Oxfam attacks billionaires, Grant Shapps makes a rare job switch, and someone drives around with a cow in the car. See you in a moment.
Well,
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
On Mark Dolan tonight, in My Big Opinion, Tesco are offering body cameras to their staff to protect them against violent assault. The government are failing in their #1 duty to keep us safe. In My Take at 10, the so-called experts underestimated Britain's economic performance. Where's the apology from the usual suspects who love talking this country down? Plus, Annunciata Rees-Mogg, Anne Widdecombe and top Tory backbencher Sir Geoffrey Clifton-Brown. We're live from 9.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. So it's time for Social Sensations, and we're going to take a look at some of the clips and various things online that have gone viral. First up, this video. The charity Oxfam believes that the world should aim to halve the number of billionaires between now and 2030. Let's have a look at their latest video. So that's Oxfam there with their cigar-chomping caricature of a billionaire. Do you think Oxfam should be getting involved in politics in this way?
No, I mean, I took that to be a dating video.
That's kind of sexy.
Yeah. Swipe left.
It's just an odd one, isn't it, really?
It was really odd. I mean, it was just, it was missing a bit of a cat there, wasn't there? Like and a laugh. But no, I've got a new tie on, by the way, Andrew.
Honestly, Paul, he changes more than Elizabeth Taylor and Cleopatra.
Oh, yeah, I demand it.
Every scene, yeah, absolutely. OK, well, that was an odd thing from Oxfam, but we're going to have a look at this tweet. So this tweet was today by the newspaper columnist Owen Jones. Here was the tweet that he wrote. Someone who unironically describes gay people as homosexual is almost certainly homophobic.
Oh, my God.
Now, this has caused a lot of people commenting on this online, as often happens. The actor James Dreyfus quote-tweeted this. I don't wonder if we've got that tweet. Hi, Owen, I'm a homosexual. Gay people are, by definition, homosexual, i.e. same-sex attracted, big, fat, full stop. Yeah, I mean, it's an odd one, isn't it? I think part of the reason why people are getting upset by the word homosexual, as Owen might be, is that he feels it's become associated with people who use the phrase same-sex attracted.
Yeah. I mean, I think Owen Jones needs to go to the opera. And that'll sort it all out.
Absolutely. Do you think homosexual is a homophobic word?
I used homosexual earlier to describe gay men.
I was absolutely outraged.
Yeah, you had a big go at me out the day.
Yeah.
They're not aware of this, but Andrew went crazy.
But if homosexual is homophobic, isn't homophobic homophobic?
That is homophobic.
Well, this is a minefield, isn't it?
So phobic is gay?
Phobic means gay.
OK, this is very confusing.
No, it means fear.
OK, fine. I didn't know that.
Let's not get into an etymological discussion. But it'd be great to have Owen Jones and James Dreyfus on the show to talk about that. That would be a really interesting debate.
I'd love that.
So, guys, if you're watching, Owen, I know you watch every week, and James, if you're watching, then please do come along. It'd be great fun. I don't think it will happen, but I actually genuinely, that's a genuine offer. Anyway, finally, this week in Nebraska, police pulled over a vehicle with a massive bull called Howdy Doody riding in the front passenger seat. Let's have a look at that.
Around 10 a.m., the Norfolk Police Division responded to a call of a man driving eastbound on 275 with a Watusi bull in his passenger seat.
The officers received a call reference a car driving into town that had a cow in it.
He's misgendered that. That's not a cow, is it?
I mean, it's a magnificent beast. There's no getting around it, Josh.
It's just a very organic hamburger.
Just pre-cooked.
Very fresh. It's actually Lewis Schaefer. That's what he would eat.
You know what? Lewis Schaefer would eat that.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
No problem.
Yeah.
It probably cures cancer in Lewis's world.
Lewis has all sorts of ideas about the world, but beautiful animal, though.
Absolutely. Very large.
That's what you want.
Delicious!
No, not for me. Anyway, moving on. A few weeks ago on the programme, we covered the story of a successful lesbian speed dating event, which was cancelled after a campaign of intimidation towards organiser Jenny Watson. This occurred after Jenny politely declined to let a male who identifies as a trans woman and a lesbian attend the event. So it seemed that the evening, which has helped several lesbian couples get together, was going to bite the dust. But tonight we have an update on this story. Who better to tell us than the organiser, Jenny Watson herself. Jenny, thanks for coming back to Free Speech Nation. What is the update with your event?
OK, so let's just say love won. So on Thursday, we received a letter from Stonegate saying that we were uncancelled. And so we had our next event on the Friday. We had 4 hours to prepare. It was a mad rush, but we got 20 women involved and it was a massive success. Yeah, it was a great night. And there was dancing until the early hours of that night. And it was just, it was a lovely, lovely event.
Can I ask you, because a lot of people, when they saw your interview on the show before, were a bit surprised that the idea of a lesbian dating event wanting to exclude men, that would be deemed in any way controversial. Why do you think this decision is important?
So the decision came from Stonegate, which is the largest pub chain in the UK. So this sends a really important message. So women-only lesbian events are legitimate. That's the message, and the same for gay men as well. So it's a real victory. It really is.
And what do you think this means for businesses who are taking advice from third parties, groups like Stonewall and Gendered Intelligence?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I would just say they need to be very, very careful because it's the law that counts. So don't be bullied by EDI policies, right? It's the law that trumps. So I stood up, other people need to do the same. And yeah, going forward, hopefully we're going to have other organisers coming out and it's not going to be this underground movement. Yeah, you know, you're not alone. There's organisations who understand the law. So in my case, it was the LGB Alliance, and they have been so supportive, you know, like a couple of years ago, we had nothing like that and I would have just crumbled, and their support has been amazing. And without them, we wouldn't be here, you know. Well, Friday wouldn't have happened. We would have shut down, and yeah, they've been a great force, you know, and I'm so thankful for their help. Just,
Jenny Watson, thank you so much. And I'm glad it's gone that way, because I think it's just really important that it is established in law that it is acceptable for lesbians to gather and have their dating events, for goodness sake. Anyway, thanks very much for joining me. So it's the final part of the show. We've got just enough time to look at some of our unfiltered dilemmas. So our first dilemma came in from Jess. Jess says, my boyfriend has been watching that drug dealer TV show Top Boy, and now he's speaking like a roadman. He's privately educated and grew up in Cornwall. Can I tell him he sounds silly? I used to have this at the private school I used to teach in, where these really posh boys used to come in talking like in this kind of faux gangster patois. You know?
I don't know what you're talking about, mate.
You know, I mean, why is it that this happens? All these posh people.
Because it was the same with me, and I did the same all through public school. It was we were all trying to prove how street we are. All these rich, spoiled kids. It's pathetic.
But it's just weird. Like my school, these kids complain about, oh, they got so much bear prep, man. You know what I'm saying? Like, essentially, prep is not something that gangsters do. You know, they just don't, do they? What do you think?
Well, it doesn't work the other way round, does it? I didn't go to a posh school, as you may have
No.
Yes. Sorry, Andrew, I didn't know. And if I'd pretended... You've worn 2 ties this evening. Neither of them belong to me. And if I'd pretended to be posh, that wouldn't have worked in my favour.
No, absolutely not. Well, we've got another dilemma from Megan, if we've got time for this. Megan says, my flatmate has a date this week, but it's in our kitchen, and the guy's coming around to cook her Iranian food. I don't want to be banished to my bedroom and lose access to the kitchen and living room all evening. Can I ask to join them? Or do I really have to make myself scarce? You can't ask to join them. No, look, that's going to... One thing will lead to another, and it'll be a kind of menage a trois situation. You don't want that, do you, necessarily?
I want to see that, yeah.
It's actually, I think, a bit unfair for the flatmate to say, I'm going to have the date at home, because it's imposing.
It's incredibly imposing, isn't it? Just sending it back to... I mean, you'd want to go back to your room, though, when you want to watch that.
No, I wouldn't have thought so.
I mean, I'm more worried that she wants to be in the kitchen.
Yeah, maybe.
With the date.
It's an odd one. Well, look, quickly, final dilemma from Sarah. Sarah says, if I'm talking to my friend at a party and a man joins in the conversation, she will immediately walk away, as she doesn't want the guy ever to have the satisfaction of thinking we are competing for him. Is this feminist? Or is this just weird? I'm going to go with weird.
That explains why a lot of women used to walk away when I would talk to them.
Yeah. There had to be some explanation, didn't there? Thoughts, Paul?
Well, again, I've never been in a conversation with 2 women and at any point thought they are competing for me.
No, probably not.
Well, that mother-daughter thing. Yeah, maybe. So I don't think... Well, it's not my automatic thought. It's not like, come on, ladies, chill out.
Well, thanks everyone for sending in those unfiltered dilemmas. I really do appreciate you sending them in every week, and I know we really solve things, don't we? We really help you.
I feel like people going away, their lives improved.
That's what the show is all about.
You're welcome.
Well, look, thanks so much for joining us for Free Speech Nation. This was the week when we saw Roisin Murphy being cancelled, another one in the cancellation list, and they say it doesn't exist, but it clearly does. Thank you so much to my wonderful panel, Paul Cox and Josh Harry, and to all of my guests this evening. And by the way, if you want to join us live in the studio and be part of the wonderful audience, you can do that. Just go to the address that's on screen right now, www.sroaudiences.com. Come along, join us. We've got food. We've got wine, we've got sort of tepid beer, haven't we? But it's all right. They got rid of the Bud Light. We had that before, God knows why. Do come along. Do stay tuned for the brilliant Mark Dolan tonight. That's coming up next. And please don't forget that Headliners is on every night. That's the late night paper preview show where comedians talk you through the next day's top news stories. Thanks for watching Free Speech Nation. See you next week.
Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good evening. I'm Jonathan Vaughtry here with your GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. Hope you enjoyed your weekend. It is ending on a fairly fine note for many of us. A lot of clear intervals through the evening and overnight away from the far north of Scotland. That is going to remain a bit breezier and cloudier. Some mist and fog patches will form underneath those clear skies, particularly for eastern England, southeast England, but also Northern Ireland turning quite murky first thing on Monday morning. For most of us, though, it will be a fairly mild, warm start, temperatures around 14-15 degrees Celsius in a lot of our towns and cities. Once that mist and fog does eventually clear its way off, Monday promises to be a pretty glorious day for many of us. A good swathe of sunshine for the vast majority of the UK. It will be a bit breezy around the West Country, gusty along some coastlines here, and always cloud lingering across the very far north of Scotland. Drizzly outbreaks of rain for Shetland as well. But elsewhere in that sunshine, feeling very warm, widely into the mid-20s, if not the high 20s across southern England and Wales. High pressure sticks with us into the middle part of the week, but it reorientates itself, so we tap into a southerly airflow that allows us to feed in some even warmer conditions from continental Europe. So on the grand scheme of things, Tuesday looks like another pretty fine day for many of us. Again, still quite blustery across the southwest, some higher base cloud pushing in across Northern Ireland as well, turning the sunshine hazier, and cloud just still lingering across parts of Orkney, the Isle of Lewis. But still plenty of mats of sunshine to be had, and temperatures peaking around Wednesday and Thursday over 30 degrees Celsius.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton, for 2 hours packed full of unfiltered opinions, unique takes and fiery debates. I guarantee you blockbuster guests and exclusive reporting with no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I think there is a culture of collusion, quite frankly.
And no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable